Hi, I'm back again with you guys, and thank you for coming to my channel. Today, I'm going to do a review of the movie His Only Son. It was produced by Angel Studios. Um, the director was David Helling. The lead actor is Noah, or not Noah, Abraham, is played by Nicholas Mawad. Sarah is played by Sarah Syed. Isaac is played by Eden Moskowitz, and the voice of the Lord is played by Daniel da Silva. I've never heard of any of these actors before. I've looked them up. Most of them are actually quite experienced um, and have done quite a body of work. But this is the only movie I've seen them in. And of course, if you haven't heard this movie is about Abraham and sacrificing his son Isaac. And it starts off with Abraham having an encounter with God in the desert by himself, and God tells him to sacrifice his son. Abraham asks him not to do it, and God tells him he has to. The rest of the movie is kind of struggling with that throughout the most part of it. Um, so as the movie goes on, there's a lot of conversations between Abraham and Sarah, especially concerning, they do show the tension between um, the Abraham's first child Ishmael and the conflict between Sarah and Hagar. They don't get into any details of that, but they do show that that was there, um, mostly between conversations between Sarah and Abraham. I found the movie interesting. It is slow paced, so if you're looking for something that has a fast clip, this is not the movie for you. But I found it to be very interesting in the way they portrayed it, um, the way that they portray the journey. There's conflicts as Abraham is taking Isaac with him, and he doesn't tell Isaac in the movie. And he has two other servants that go with him. One of the servant kind of despises Abraham um, because Abraham sent Ishmael away. And so there's conflicts on the roads there, confrontations with other soldiers. Um, they finally get to Mount Moriah. You got to know the story. So I did find all of this rather interesting and the way everything played out. Um, the cinematography was good. It was filmed out in California, and they must have gone way in the desert to film that. It looked really good. The camera work was good. The acting was good as well. It was very believable. The sorrow that Abraham is showing and the struggles that he's going through as he's going out and making this trip all the way there. Another interesting thing that I found was it begins with a quote from Jesus where Jesus is telling the Pharisees, before Abraham was, I am. And that's in that conflict where um, the Pharisees are asking Jesus where he gets his authority from, and they're kind of really going after him. And Jesus tells them, like, you believe Abraham, and one that greater than Abraham is here. And the Pharisees tell them, like, how are you greater than Abraham? How are you greater than they don't know what to make of that. And so they raise that up. And Jesus tells them, before Abraham was, I am. A lot of this, if I remember this one correctly, had to do with the conflict about the temple and when the temple was made, and how can Jesus be greater than the temple? It says, when Abraham was born, I am. This is actually a claim to divinity by Jesus when he says this. It doesn't seem so, but the thing I am, it's not like I was. It's I am, so it's a continuous thing, and he's claiming to have existed before Abraham existed. And especially the I am, that's in Hebrew, that would be the ego e me, and that's kind of how the Greek translation of the Hebrew name was. That would be the Greek translation um, of the Hebrew name of God. And it shows these different things that the traveling that goes through. So one of the things that I think we get through a movie like this is it kind of helps us maybe give a thought experiment in our minds of what it would be like to be asked by God to give up something like your firstborn son. Um, in today's culture, the order of the child usually doesn't mean much, but then the firstborn was very important because the firstborn child was the next head of the family. As soon as the father died, the firstborn child would take over as head of the family. The family business would go to him, or you know, especially back in the Abraham, the tribe, he would become the leader of Abraham's tribe, the group that was following him. And so to be asked to sacrifice your not just your firstborn, but it's your firstborn because um, Ishmael was sent away, so now it's your firstborn, and it's your only son. And in the ancient world, particularly like here in contemporary America, we don't think much about that. I mean, nobody wants to be childless, but the legacy that we expect to be carried on is much different here in America, um, because your firstborn is most likely not going to take over his family's business. He's going to move out of the house. He's going to move off on his own. Each of the families, even if they stay in close contact with each other, are going to operate for the most part independently of each other. Where in this ancient world, those families, those independent families of mother, father, child, did not operate independently each other. Um, the family was basically a clan, and so what you had was you had the mother, father, child, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins, you know, the whole clan. And if the head of the clan only has one child and that child gets killed and he never has another child, then you have an issue of who the next leader of the clan is. So even though the Bible doesn't discuss it, when you look at the culture of that time when this is taking place, that would have been something on Abraham's mind when God tells Abraham to go sacrifice Isaac. It's not just like you're sacrificing my son. It's also the future of Abraham's entire kind of clan that had built up around him, all the people that traveled with him, all his servants, and whoever else that would have been. So, who's also the first son? If Abraham ends up dying before Sarah, there's the question then of who takes care of Sarah. That would have fallen to the firstborn to make sure that got done. Even if one of the other siblings wound up playing like the active role, it was the firstborn son's responsibility to make sure that if he didn't do it, that one of the other brothers took care of the mother. So there's a lot more writing on that than we tend to think about today. Um, this is also a very important story. My opinion is that this is history, but um, it's a very important event because this is kind of a founding father, so to speak, of ancient Judaism, the ancient Hebrews, the Israelites. Their Yahweh worship of the Old Testament. He's kind of a forerunner of Moses, who actually um, takes Abraham's descendants and takes them to the Promised Land and founds them as a nation. And so all of that is really the film doesn't explore this, but all of this history and theology is kind of linked to this story in different ways. Um, The acting was done well. I was especially surprised. The acting was done well, especially considering there's no new name actings. There was several things that I didn't expect to see. Um, so as Abraham's traveling there, the Bible just talks about Abraham takes the wood and takes Isaac, and they go out to Mount Moriah, and they had some servants, and Abraham tells the servants, "Stay here. The boy and I will go and worship." So some servants went with Abraham, but it doesn't talk about any interactions that they had with anybody along the way. And so it's very possible that they could have uh, run into someone, and it's also possible that they didn't run into someone. And I just found it interesting that the locals remembered Abraham for being good to the people. Um, Although that local comes back around and there's a dispute because the local did not like where Abraham was. So I kind of found that interesting the way they worked that into the movie. I don't want to say too much about it for those of you that might want to go see it. Um, and along the way, they really show Abraham struggling with what he's been asked to do. And he even asked the Lord if this is judgment. And he asked the Lord to take him instead. Now, that's not in the biblical record, but I could kind of see that being a possibility. So these movies can work as kind of like a thought experiment of what are the details that would have happened along the way. Um, and so um, you also have these two servants. I already mentioned that two servants having a dispute over Isaac and Ishmael, and a dispute over whether Abraham was a good man or not. Um, that dispute never really seems to come to an end. And then the end travels, goes from Abraham and Isaac. Abraham's cutting Isaac loose, and they see the ram, and they're getting ready to sacrifice the ram, and it cuts away, and you see it's like evening time sunset, and it's three people hanging on three different crosses, an obvious reference to the crucifixion of Jesus. And so, like, some theologians have seen this as like a um, kind of a a forerunner event of the crucifixion, where Isaac is to be slain, but instead of Isaac, God provides a lamb. And we, all being sinful people and deserving of death, but instead of wrath being poured out on us, God provides another person, another way out. And that is Jesus' death, removing our sins so that we can be restored, have a restored relationship with God. So they do tie this right into the gospel at the end. And so I found the whole movie interesting. I recommend going and watching it. It's a slow paced movie. So if you're looking for something that's like high adventure, it's not that. But it is very interesting. It provides you a lot to think about with the story of Abraham and Isaac. And so I give the movie a thumbs up, and I hope you enjoyed this review. And I will see you next time.